Begin the current Daf Mesechus Bava Kama Daf Samach Vav. Begin 4 lines down at the top of the Yomid, where the Gemara is in the middle of a discussion from the previous Daf, with this halacha of Shinui being Koina, which was a teaching of Rabbi Loi, that he said, which because this relates back to halachas of our Parak Meruba, which we're discussing the contrast between Kevel and Dal Vehei. Really, we're just saying both those halachas. That Meruba, Kevel has one more halacha than Dal Vehei, which regarding if it's Ruach Chaim, or living things, or even not living things. But Rabbi Loi had said halacha that if you steal a sheep, a lamb, and it becomes a ram or egel nasashar, that makes an automatic shinui, and then he's kainit. So now when he slaughters and he sells it, it's his own that he's slaughtering it. Selling it, he's not going to be chayiv. It's on that halacha that the Gemara continues to explain. Today's daf in Eretz Yisrael and throughout the entire world. Some of the discussed in today's daf are geneva ugizela, regarding when you steal something covertly and when you steal something outright, regarding different halachas that apply to them. Shina kaina, the halacha of when you change something, you acquire it. Shina Hashem, as we said in the previous daf, regarding when the change is named that itself as a shina. According to Rabbi Yish, is kaina just when the person gives up hope. Now that gives the right for someone to acquire. Rabbi Yisrael Yish ain't kaina. Someone gives hope does not make that you automatically acquire. What's the halacha of Chamash Abel Pesach, which is regarding giving back the item as it is, and also as applies to Yish, a person giving up hope. And Tumas Mishkav comes into the discussion regarding when a tummy person lays down on a bed, that the bed becomes tummy. So begin the current daf Samach Vav, 4 lines down at the top of the Yomid. The Gemara is finishing up the conversation from the previous daf. Says the Gemara, Ad kan loy pligi. We had this machlekes Rebbe Loi, Rebbe Chanina, but their whole machlekes was Ella on the following point. The Mar Sava, Rebbe Loi held Shina Koina, that when it changes from a lamb to a ram, you're going to acquire it. But Mar Sava, Rebbe Chanina held that no, ain't Shina Koina, that the fact that it changes is not going to make it considered the ganavs, and therefore it's going to be chayev on Dal Vehei. Avlein in Shlumim, regarding payment, for example, Rashi says, let's say according to Rebbe Loi, regarding the kefil, or according to Chanina, regarding the Dal Vehei. Or let's say we're just talking about Yukar Vizula without any change, which according to everyone, there's going to be a payment. Kuliyam, according to everyone, it sounds like Kedimikar Mishalim, that you're going to pay as it was. This is a question that we have from the Bryce that we had alluded to from Rashi, which the Gemara is finishing up right now. But Kuliyam, according to everyone, Kedimikar Mishalim, you're going to pay as it was originally worth. Because tell me, what did the Bryces say? I mean, no one disagrees with the Bryce on these points. The Shaila is a Bisham, Basil, like we said, but the Bryce of Misham Tashlumi Kefil, but Tashlumi Bava Chamisha, you're going to pay for the Kefil Dal Vehei Ke'ein Shaganav, as it's worth at the time when it was stolen. Says the Gemara, Limitabat Yiv to Dirab. Let's say this refutes Rav, because the Amar Rav said in the previous Daf, Keren Ke'ein Shaganav Mishalim, the principle you pay as it was worth when it was stolen, and Tashlumi Kefil, but Tashlumi Dal Vehei is Kashas Amadabedin, as it's worth at the time of the court case, meaning when it goes down the price, and for sure when it goes up in price. Because over there, even the principal you would have to pay according to Rav as it is right now, because he holds like Rabbah, who says Tav Yashasi, if you break it or you drink it, or you drink it, you have to pay the higher value of Dal Zuzim. But one thing is that it's supposed to be Kashas Amadabedin. The Brisa says no, it can't Shaganav. So Amar Rabbah says that Taloim, so it makes an interesting distinction. If you're coming to pay lambs, which is what you stole, is Kedimikara. You're right. That's when the Brisa says it's going to be enough to pay Ke'ein Shaganav, because you stole a lamb and you paid a lamb. And Shar Tachas Ashar. But Damim, if you're paying the monetary value, which is what Rav's teaching was, that you have to be Chayim of Geneva, you have to be Achayehu le Geneva Ke'ein Shaganav. So that's what we're saying. Only the Karen is going to be Ke'ein Shaganav. But the Kefil and the Alvehei is going to be Kishal Achshav. It's going to be how much it's worth right now. So it depends what it is. If it's the thing itself that you're giving back, so then, yeah, all you have to give it back is the Kefil and the Alvehei will only be Ke'ein Shaganav. But if you're giving back money, then is where the pasuk is telling us that only the Karen will be Ke'ein Shaganav. That's Achyehu lekeren Ke'ein Shaganav, which means you have to vitalize. It means to say you're not giving back the actual thing. So then you're giving back money. So it has to be the money of how much you're worth when you stole it. But that infers, but the Kivin Dava is going to be Kishas Amadabedin, Therefore, that does not contradict Rav. Now, going back to this halacha of a kinyan with a shinui, Amar Rabba. Rabba establishes that shinui, where you actively change something, that's obvious that biblically, most definitely, kaina, you acquire the object. And when you give back the item, you don't have to give it back as it is. You could just give back the monetary value because it's already yours. For example, let's say you stole wool and you made a garment out of it. You don't have to give back the item. It's yours. You only have to give back the money. Why? Because ksiva v'tanina. This is written in the Torah and it's learned in the Mishnaic text. Now, his point is, but if all you had was yiyush, if you only gave up hope and you didn't do any shina to it, that we're not sure, as the Gemara is going to explain, when the Rabbanan say you're acquiring it, if it's biblical or rabbinic. But what he's trying to say over here is, but shinui? Oh, that's definitely biblical because state and Torah, and we have Mishnayos for this. How so? Ksiva. So the Gemara explains. It's written in the Torah. It says in Meyikra, you have to give back the robbery that you robbed. Now, what are you teaching me saying that you robbed? Of course. What's this Hashagazel? What's teaching is if it's the same way it was when you robbed it, then you give it back. But if not, it's not Ashagazel, it's not what you stole, then you only have to give back money, you don't have to give back the actual item itself that you robbed. So you see, the Torah says this idea of Shinoi being kaina. Now, Tanini, we also learned this in the Mishnah later on the Tzadik Gimel Amud Beis. The Mishnah says, Hagoizel Eitzim, which is a parak, called parak Hagoizel Eitzim. If you steal wood, Boston Kalim, you make vessels out of it, you carve out, you take it on these overnight, you take the wood that you stole and you chisel out and you make a nice wooden bowl. Or Tzem Avasim Begadim, you steal the wool by that farm and you make a nice garment for your anacle. Nesham Kashas Gzela. You have to pay as was worth when you robbed it. You see that you're not giving back the item. You're paying for the wool. You're paying for the value of the wood because the fact that you made a shinoi was kind of it. Or inami, another source, you're giving a Mishnah Masechta Schulin. The Mishnah says, lehispik litnoi loy. If, let's say, a person did not get the opportunity to give the Reishis Hagez, which is the first shearings of the wool, which is one of the 24 Kana gifts, he didn't get a chance to give it to the Kohen, Asher Tzavah, until he died already. So, meaning they were dying, all the wolves, and they before they gave to the Kohen, they died there too. Patri is exempt from Reishis Hagez because they acquired it by doing a change to the wool. And actually, Rashi points out in this halach, you don't even have to give the monetary value even because the Kohen cannot bring it to court, can't make a summons because he can say, I'll give it to another Kohen. But before he died, it's not true. Whoever wants to, if a Kohen would grab it, he would be zoich on it. But now that he died it's already his, and you would just try to be prosecuting for hezek, but it's not your hezek because I can give it to another Kohen. So you see that if you make a change to something, biblically you're going to acquire it. That's where it takes him to the next halacha. But yiyush, if the owner gave up hope, I know the rabbis say that the one who has this item now, that the guy gave up hope, that he acquires it and it's enough to just pay the monetary value from the one who gave up hope. But miyuleidin, I don't know, by this ganav, by the guy who the owner gave up hope, that he acquires it, I don't know idaraisi drabanan, if that's biblical or rabbinic. What's that question? So the Gemara explains. Idaraisi, this is a biblical halacha that mididav mitzvah aveda, similar to someone who finds a lost object. Meaning, mitzvah aveda, when you find a lost object, love isn't it kivin the meyayish maramina, since that the owner had given up hope already. Mikmade the taste liyade, before the guy who finds it picks it up, before the finder, so kanile. So therefore, the one who found it acquires it, as you learned in the Bryce and Elam Mitzis and Bamatzid of Chavbez Mabeis. How do we know that a lost object, that the river flooded it, since the owner already gave up hope that it's permitted for the one who finders keepers? Because it says, when do you have a chiva shavas abeda? When it's lost from him. Meaning when it's only lost from the owner, but it's found by other people. That excludes this case, which is lost from everyone, and the owner for sure gave up hope. So we see that you're kaina by an aveda when the owner is miyayish, when he gives up hope. Oh, so hainami, here also by Gizela, where it came to his hands before yish, but then subsequently the owner was miyayish, he gave up hope. So you'll say, Kim the miyayish mara, since the owner gave up hope, kanile acquires it. So amakani, so you see that biblically it's going to be enough. He's acquiring it with the years of the owner, and it'd be enough for him to just pay back the money, which as Teis der Masal Hachanami Kivin Miyayish says that even though Yish is not effective by an Aveda after it already came to the hand of the one who found it, as the Gemara says, isn't it because the owner gave up hope before he got it? As the Gemara says explicitly in Bab Metzia and Chaval Mabeis. So what are we learning out to Gezela where he had it before the owner gave up? But we want to learn out that Yish could be kind of by a Gazlan, even after it came to him, because by Metzia also, although he wouldn't be acquiring that way, that he wouldn't have to give it back at all and to be totally exempt, because he's already obligated in Hashavas Aveda, but he would be acquiring regarding this, that he wouldn't have to pay back the thing itself, but the monies itself. So too regarding Gazlan, we're trying to learn, of course you have to give back what you stole, but you just wouldn't have to give back the object, you don't have to give back the monetary value. I didn't know, maybe you can't compare it. Loi dami la Aveda. No, maybe it's not similar to a lost object. Why? Because by a lost object, when it comes to his hand, like we were just pointing out, it comes to him in a permitted way. He's not intending to steal it, and he picked it up already when the guy gave up hope. But over here, giving the bisucha since it came to him in the prohibited way, maybe this halacha of that you don't have to give it back if the owner gave up hope. You only have to give back the monies. Maybe that's a rabbinic halacha. What would the rabbinic halacha be for this? And this is what's known as takanas hashavim, because of the remedy for those to repent. Because if he would have to give back the stolen object itself, he would never do tshuva. Because who knows what happened to this already? He forgot already what he did with the stuff that he stole. So rabbinically, they said, okay, if the guy gave up hope, all you have to do is give back the monetary value, not the object itself. So Rab is not sure if this halach of Yish Kain is biblical or rabbinic. But the Gemara actually brings Rabbi Yosef Ami says actually Yish Ein Kain is not true. Giving up hope from the owner does not make an acquisition for the thief, and even rabbinically, and the Goslin has to give back the object itself, not just the monetary value. And moreover, Rabbi Yosef backs up his opinion, and he asks on Rabbah, who holds that Yish is kaina, from the Mishnah on Daf Tzadik Vav Mabes. The Mishnah says, Gazel Chametz. Someone stole a truck full of brownie bars, and Vavlava Pesach. And now it's already, he stole it by Purim time, that there was all this big truck that was supposed to go delivery somewhere. He loved brownie bars, he couldn't help himself. Stole this big truck, and now it's already Nuch Pesach. So as a Ketintam and Beis, he could tell the victim, he pulls up with the truck, he says, here, what's yours is in front of you. As it is, he gives back the truckload of the brownie bars. Why? Because this is what's called Hazik Shein and Nicker. It's not recognizable any damages. The same brownie bars, they last for 2 years because they're in the packaging with all the artificial stuff they put in over there. The Zelba brownie bars. Okay. The problem is like this. It says Rabbi Yosef to Rabbah, Bahai, this case, even the Mata Eden Isura, when it comes Pesach, the original owner, Vadim Yayish, obviously gives up hope because he knows, in Pesach, he was hoping he was going to find the truck, where it went, the guy took it. No, Nuch Pesach is, you can't write Gebak Nuch Pesach Tufshin Peidal, it's done. Now, so Vadim Yayish, if you think like you, Rabbi, that you say, that when the owner gives up hope, the Ganev acquires it. Wait a second. So why could he tell him, look, this is yours, take your truckload of brownie bars back? He has to pay him the full value. But you already acquired it. It's your brownie bars. You want to pay me back in the brownie bars? It has no value. So how's he allowed to just say, so Malay Rabbi said, no. No, when did I say, is when the owner gives up hope and the kind of wants to acquire it. Then he'll acquire it. And he won't have to give back the item itself. He can just give back the value. But this case is the owner's giving up hope, but the Ganav doesn't want to acquire. Why would he want to be acquiring? He knows comes Pesach, he's going to be chayav tens of thousands of dollars worth of all these brownie bars, and therefore that's what he could say because he didn't acquire it. Because although he's miyayish, he didn't want to be kind of. But the Gemara continues asking, Esvei Abai Rabba. Now Abai, the student of Rabbi Yosef, he asks on Rabba from the following brisa. The brisa tells us that it says in the pasuk in the beginning of Yikra, Im Oila Karbanai. If his carbon is a Oila, what's Karbanai? His carbon. So they're teaching us B'loi Hagazel, not if it's stolen. Because if it's stolen, it's not going to be L'Ratzain for Hashem. Now, the Gemara assumes at this point that he stole a regular animal, and then he brings it. Says the Gemara, Hechadami. So what's the case talking about? If it's talking about that the owner didn't give up hope yet from this amulet you stole, lama likra. Why you need a pasuk? Pshita, it's obvious, as the top Taisa explains, that even if you would sanctify, it wouldn't even be sanctified. Because halacha is, as the Gemara tells us later on the Samach Tes, that if you steal something and owner didn't give up hope, neither one of them can be makdashit. So this whole carbon business doesn't even start. It's not even sanctified. Ella, rather obviously, it's la'achar years. It's after the owner gave up hope. Wait a second. Shema Mino, you see from this, a yish leikani. Because if yish would be kaina, then you would say that it is karbanai. So obviously you see, not like you Rabba. Samalei Rabba says that bulutamech. Wait a second. According to your reasoning, that you're thinking that this case, and that's why you're asking on Rabba, is that you stole chulin and then you sanctified it, and then you're trying to prove it must have been after years, and that's how you mark the shit. But then you see it's not going to be kaina. But Hadatanya, what do you do with the following brisa regarding zav? So this is bringing in a very different context, but we're trying to explain the response. The pasuk says in Yikra that if a man's who's tamei is gonna touch b'mishkavay, and actually a regular tar person is gonna touch. The pasuk says isha sheyiga b'mishkavay. The man's gonna touch the bed of the zav. It's exes akasev to tell us only if you're touching the bed of the zav, below hagazel, but not the stolen bed. A stolen bed does not become an avatama to contaminate a person who touches it. Echadami, what's the case they're talking about? Elim the gazel amra va'avdi mishkav. If it's talking about that a guy stole wool and he made a bed out of it, you think there's anyone who's going to say, any one of the Amayram that's going to say Shina Maisilakani, that when you actually did a change to the actual item itself, that you don't acquire it? The whole machlekes was only by years. But by Shina, everyone agrees it's going to be kind of. That can't be that's not Mishkavai. What do you have to say? It's talking about the Gazel Mishkav the Chav. It's talking about we actually stole the guy's bed. And then the Zav sat down, that someone who touches is not going to come tummy. So then says Rava, I could tell you the same thing here. The Gazel carbon the Chav, he stole the carbon of his friend, that his friend had already sanctified. And the truth is, therefore, how is it a carbon? Because his friend was sanctified, and therefore it's before years. And we have to tell you that it's not going to be the Rasna at all, says Rashi, to tell you even for the real owners. So even though he didn't give up hope, the Ganav now brings it as a carbon, it's not going to work for the original guys. Or another interpretation, says Rashi, the Gazel carbon, the Chavi, where he steals his friend's carbon, therefore even after years she's not going to be kind of because the carbon cannot be stolen, because wherever it is, it's Hashem's. So two very different interpretations. But be that as it may, it's not difficult on Rabbah. Truth is, if you stole a chulin animal and then only gave up hope, then it actually would be karbanai and it would not be v'lahagazel, like you see in the halacha mishkavai. V'lahagazel must mean you stole the mishkav here, so you stole the actual carbon itself, not a chulin animal that you then sanctified. Now the Gemara now asks the other way around. Rabbi Yosef. Abaye asks on Rabbi Yosef, who held that yish is not kaina from Mishnah Masechtas Kalim. So here we're going into another context also. Ayros shel balabayis. If you have hides, which are the skins of the animal owned by a private person, Allah is machshava mitamasa. What does that mean? The thoughts will make it tummy. So if let's say a regular private person generally does not sell his things, what does he do with the hides? He makes leather. It doesn't matter. He makes beds, makes trays, he makes boards out of them. Now, if he thinks on his hides for something that is fit in that state where it's not missing any more work being done to it, so it's makabel tumah right away because it could be used as a tray, as a bed right now. That's if it's a balabais, a regular private person. Now, v'shel abdon, but let's say of a tanner who generally sells his leather, his thoughts will not make it susceptible to tumah because he changes his mind and he sells it. And the buyer is going to still make shoes out of it, and it's not gemar malacha yet. We know an item can only be makabel tumah when it's finished in its malacha. So therefore, since it's not finished in its processing, it's not going to become tummy. Now, that's regarding a private person and regarding a tanner. Now we move on to another case. Shalganov, let's say a thief stole a piece of leather, a hide. So machshavim mitamasim, his thoughts that he wants to use it in his current state will make it tummy. Why? Because he acquired it with years. Because this Tana holds, stam geneva, when there's someone covertly steals something, the owner gives up hope because he doesn't know. This is before the days of the video cameras, before the days of, you don't know who to try to get it back from. You don't know who stole it. So therefore the person gives up hope. Shalgazim, but let's say a guy openly steals from you, he pulls up with a gun, he says your life or your hides, that guy, his thought to use it in the current state will not make it susceptible to Tama. Even though he thought about it for somebody that's not missing malacha, for example, let's say for covering the bundles on the horses and the mules, like they make out of the bear skin, it's not going to come tummy. Why? Because by stam gezela, not geneva, gezela, there's no years. Because he knows who took it from him. He said, I'll bring him to court. That's how the Tanna Kama holds. Shimon says actually chilaf advarim. He says the exact opposite. He says generally gezela, when the guy openly steals it, there is years. Because you see the guy's a difficult person. He's a strong person. He'll walk right up to you and he'll take it from you. Therefore, you feel like you'll never get it back from him. So shall gazlan machshava metamasan. A gazlan, the machshava will make a tamir because it's his. He'll never get it back from him, and the guy is mamash miyayish. Shlaganev, but a thief, ein machshava metamasan. His thought will not make it acceptable to him because of Vishalai Nisiyashbam. The owner did not give it away. He thinks I'll find who the ganav was, and he's a scaredy cat, so I'll end up getting it back from him. Okay, but one thing we see, Bishmamina says Abayit Rabbi Yosef, we see Yish Kana. The whole halacha is built on the principle of Yish. Question is, who's being Miyayish? That's Machlekes Rabbi Shimon and Tanna Kama. But you see that Yish is being Kaina. Amalei, so Rabbi Yosef responded, he said, we're talking about where he did trimming to it, where there's two things. There's not only Yish, there's Shina Maisa. Oh, Yish itself would not be Kaina. The Kana, but the Gazan also did trimming. But however, Maskevah Rabbi Barav Chanan, he says, but one of the cases that discussed over there is that he thought about it to be used as an itzvah, where it's like a tray that you eat on, which is like a table. A tray does not need any trimming, because without trimming, it's also makabel tama, because it's fit for its utility without that, because the trimming is only used to make it nicer. And where would you say, says the Gemara, that we know we're talking about even a itzvah? Because it's none. The Mishnah before that says, anywhere where you're not missing any work, so the thought about it, just that you're ready to use it, will make it susceptible to tama. Yesh chasar malacha, if it's missing work, then the thought's not going to make it tama. Chutz min itzvah, that even though it's missing the trimming, the machshav is going to make it tama because it's ready to be used as it is. So if that's the case, so then you don't need the trimming. So there's no shinu ma'isa. All you need is the yish, and you see that you are going to be kind of. So Elamar Rava, rather Rava says, in defense of Rav Yosef, he says the truth is, Hai Milsa, this teaching, Koshiba Rabba Rav Yosef Esrin B'Tartin Shnin. Rabba found this as a difficulty on Rav Yosef's opinion. We held Yish is not kaina for 22 years, because Rav Yosef couldn't answer the question. It's true. There's no Shina Malach over here. It's only Yish, and you say you can be kaina. Began of Gazan. Leifarka, and he didn't answer it at the Yosef Rav Yosef Bereisha. Till Rav Yosef became the Rosh Hashiva. Oh, you become a Rosh Hashiva, become a Rav, you get Siyata Dishmaya, and finally, because those are 22 years that Rabba was the Rosh Hashiva, and we know that famous Gemara elsewhere that's brought. Uparka, and then he became the Rosh Hashiva, and he was able to answer the question. Because Shin Hashem, Kishina Maisadami. The change of the name is like a change of action, as the Gemara explains. Shin Maisadami, what's the reason when you change something that you're kained? Because Hasem Mikacha Eitzim Hashtakelim, before it was wood, now it's vessels. Shin Hashem Nami, the change of name also Mikacha Kogle Haid Mashka. First it was called hide, Bahashta Barz, and now it's called Itzvah, which is in Aramaic called Itzvah. So you're right. When you do the trimming, or the thought, you're not doing any Shina Maisa. So we thought, it's difficult in Rabbi Yosef, it's only with Yish that you're kind of. It's not true. Because by designating it for that, it changes its name. And Shina Hashem itself is going to be the Kinyan. But Yish itself, you're right, would not be kind of. However, on that the Gemara asks, Ayvare Marish, but you have a beam, Dika Shina Hashem, where it changes names. When you put it into a building, you didn't do anything to the beam, but the Mikara, before you put into the building, kashuda, it's called a kashuda. Vahashta, now, talala, it's called the roof, after you put into the building. And you put boards and wood on it, it changes names. So the question is, based on your principle that just changing name is enough to be kained, but if it's not, we're doing the Mishnah Masechta is getting that says, Alamara Shagazal, if someone steals a beam, Shabana Bibid, if he built it into a building, Shanetel Damav, that then he only has to, the victim could only take the monetary value, not back. He doesn't take the beam back. Why? Says the Mishnah, because we want to remedy those who want to do tshuva. If I'm going to have to destroy my whole building to get your beam out, that little electrical wire, I stole that copper, and now it's deep inside my building, I'll never do tshuva. Now, time later comes the shavim. It sounds like the reason because of a remedy for those to do tshuva. As you continue, it sounds like if not for that, you have to give back as it is. But why, based on you, says that should be the halacha of Shina Hashem? Some of you say it's not true. Marish Shmayalav. The beam always has that same name, even when you build it. So it's not a Shina Hashem. The time I learned the Brisa. Pasuk in Yechezkel says, but regarding the base of Migdash, it says Salas Habayis. What's that? Elahama Lateitin. This refers to that they put the boards all around the opening of the windows and the openings, and where there's holes, they would put these beams. And Va'uvim is the main point that we want. Elu Hamarishus. These are the cross beams. So you see that it's called cross beams. It's called a Marish. It's not called just Maltalala, meaning it's called the same term even after you put it into the building. That's one answer. Zayramah, he says, the reason why by Marish you're not going to be kind with Shina Hashem, like we says, only because of Tekanas Hashavim, which is a difficult in Rabbi Yisrael, we're saying that, Shina Hashem, that's because Shina Chizle Biyasa B'Shina Hashem. When you could undo something to take it back to what its original state was, and when all it had was a change of name, if you would demolish it, it would be a kashura as it was in the beginning. Shina, that's not considered as a shina. But avarzin, but the tray out of the hides of the leather, that's never going to be called mashcha ever again, just by designation. And therefore, that's the difference between those. And therefore, Rabbi Yisrael is not difficult because you're right. Yish itself, he could hold is not kind of. But there, it's because Hashin Hashem. What are you going to do with the Mishnah Masechtas is Gittin? So we have two answers: either because it never changed its name, it always had the same Marish, or because it's a Shina Chizle B'Yasai. It could go right back to what it originally was. And when it's just Shina Hashem with Shina Chizle B'Yasai, then that's not considered enough of a Shina, and therefore not going to be kind. Thank you to any time. Those things.